Hello and welcome to Modo 25's expert panel session. Very pleased, in a minute I'll introduce you to Neil and Anna, who have kindly joining us to tackle this question of, does the board know enough about digital marketing? And I suppose how, as either board members, can you get access to the right data to make the right decisions, and all as how as digital specialists or managers can you make sure you give your board the right information, the right data to help you make better decisions and get where we need to get. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the event, we will run through who BOSCO is and why we're authorised to host this. And we will then finish on time, and we'll give you plenty of time to ask questions. So if you've got any questions, you could just use it in the Q&A. And fire the questions through, we'll pick them up and deal with them. Any questions we don't get through, we will put in an email follow-up, and we'll send everybody a recording of the session as well. And we're also streaming live on Facebook, LinkedIn, across all our different channels at BOSCO and Modo 25. So BOSCO is a digital marketing intelligence platform that enables you to have all your data in one place and then predict, plan and forecast where you should be investing future budgets based on previous performance. And the team behind BOSCO is Modo 25, and that's our digital marketing in-housing agency. So we work with large brands and we help them set the right strategies, collate the right teams, and then over time enable and empower our clients to take control and bring things in-house, underpinned by BOSCO, our digital marketing intelligence platform. And that then allows us to offer a very bespoke hybrid service to all our clients. And we have many clients who are BOSCO only clients, but all Modo 25 clients also get access to BOSCO, our marketing intelligence platform. There is, however, a slightly bigger picture and a bigger story behind Modo 25 and sort of why we exist. So Modo is actually the name of a 9-year-old girl who's an orphan and lives in Jinja in Uganda, and she represents 280 other children who we help through charitable activities and donating some of our profits each year too. So, and the inspiration for Modo comes from a very smart and generous man called BOSCO. So we thought it was only fitting to name our agency, hybrid agency business, after Modo. And then we've named our digital marketing intelligence platform after BOSCO. So, because he provides the vision and the direction for Modo. So, our purpose, therefore, is to encourage and realise the potential for our clients, our team, and those less fortunate than us, as we just talked about. And we want to provide people with the right data, the right tools and opportunities so that they can take control and prosper from their future. So our whole purpose is trying to get people to have the data all accurately in one place and enable you to take control and ultimately make better decisions. So that's what we're doing at BOSCO. If you want to have a play with BOSCO, you can go over and have a look at BOSCO.io at some point and put in any URL and have a play around with the platform. Or if you wanted a sort of fully connected trial, just drop me a note afterwards and we can arrange that. So BOSCO helps you index, plan and predict where you should be allocating your budgets for maximum performance. So we're going to get straight into the session now. So if I can ask the team to switch their cameras on, I'll stop my share now. And if you can unmute yourself, let's have a look. So Anna, do you want to go first? Bit of background, introduce yourself, why you were authorised to talk about whether or not the board know enough about digital marketing.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 18 years in retail. I started off my career at a brand called Orvis and as a marketing exec, and left there 5 years on heading up all their UK marketing. I then went over to the dark side, the agency world. I went to an agency called Modo, which some of you may have heard of. And there I had various roles ranging from client director to head of digital, and worked with various brands such as Charles Tyrwhitt, Not on the High Street, Jules, Sigma Sport, and lots of others. I then left there just over 4 years ago and set up on my own, set up a consultancy. And during the last kind of 4.5 years, I've worked with a number of retailers, all the way from being kind of, well, playing like a marketing director role for retailers that can't kind of justify their own full-time marketing director, all the way through to doing some projects. So for some, I've kind of helped with their customer journey, helped with specific marketing channels, implemented new email platforms, etc. So a variety of roles. In many of my retailers that I've kind of worked with, and also when I was client side and agency side, I played a part on the board. Have been all the way from being a board member where I was the only one who knew what search engine marketing was, through to working with some boards that are kind of spot on with digital. So looking forward to kind of talking through some of the challenges today. Cool,
excellent. And Neil?
Yes, I'm Neil Sansom, got sort of 20 plus years experience, seems a long time. I can't remember where all that time went actually, in digital commerce, and worked for a number of organizations in that time. So in different vertical sectors, so electrical retailing, set up Comet's first website many years ago, years and years ago. Worked in apparel for Otto and Shop Direct. Worked across M&M Direct, which is like the TK Maxx online of grey sort of sports goods being sold online. And then worked with Shell on an international business, looking after their digital operations on an international basis. With Moss Bros as omni-channel director, looking at their stores and integration with their online business and running their online and brand elements there as well. And set up probably a couple of years ago as a consultant after being CEO of a knitwear business owned by private equity called Woolovers, which we successfully exited at the time. And been really consulting on different digital transition projects. So be that internationalization, digital strategy, helping boards get to grips with digital and what they should be looking at in terms of KPIs. Also looking at the sort of how e-commerce merges with online and how they can actually structure their omni-channel business so they get the best in terms of customer between both stores and online, and how they get the value from that going forward. So lots of different things that have been going on in the past. We're working with 3 or 4 main clients at the moment in different sectors: health and beauty, still apparel, and then sort of general department stores as well. So lots of different variety, lots of different verticals. And I think today is probably the time, I think, for digital marketeers or digital people to get a position on the board. We've had 12 months of the pandemic, or 12 months, 18 months of the pandemic really. And online has gone like that. And stores have obviously been closed. And I think you're seeing the reaction from boards now in terms of understanding their online business and the importance of online and having a presence online, because the stores have been closed for those businesses and the only sales and income they've had is from online. So there's a really big question mark, I think, at the moment, is how do you educate some of these boards that are traditionally from a retail bricks and mortar background in the new digital world?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We've had this with several of our clients. I was just thinking, if we added up our collective experience, we've got nearly over 60 years of digital marketing experience. That's not something you often would say, 60 years of digital marketing experience. So, and I think we've seen it with some of our clients, is because they haven't had any other data to look at, some people have started to believe that they are now experts in some of this digital marketing and they know everything. And I think one of the challenges we face, both one of the best things about digital marketing is the sort of volume of data you can get hold of, right? That's one of the best things. But I think that's also one of the worst things, because if you don't necessarily know which chunk of data to look at or what KPI or what lever to pull. So I suppose the first sort of question out there, if there's sort of the KPIs and the metrics, what I like to do on these sessions is give some people some tangible nuggets. So when they're sat in the office tomorrow or next week, or they want to talk to the CEO, or they go, right, these are the 3 metrics or the 4 metrics or the 1 metric. What's our North Star? Where we go? So it's, in your opinion, you don't have to agree, by the way. In your opinions, what are those 2, 5 metrics that the board has to look at? And we'll go to Anna first.
Okay, so it is challenging. So because as John pointed out, there is a lot of data out there, and either brands choose to ignore too much of it or look too much into detail at some of it. So it can be tricky about how much you actually look at. I think one of the things that you need to be kind of asking yourself are, well, it depends on the type of business you are. So are you, well, have you got retail stores, first of all? Because if you have, then your metrics will have changed massively over the last 12 months. And you're probably now struggling, and now you're coming to annualize. Because you are not against the same type of customer that was out there a year ago. Also the type of product you sell, the use of your website, how customers are actually behaving with your website, and are they using it as kind of a consideration as well, or kind of an impulse buy, come on the website, buy straight away. So there's lots of kind of things that you need to think about. However, if you are a business, which most of you kind of probably will be, where you have existing customers which you want to keep coming back to you, and you sell a product or you sell a product range where people have got reasons to come back and buy from you again, one of the important metrics is what I'd really be looking at is the customer lifetime value and how that is actually changing. Because it's fine bringing in a load of new customers to the database, but if you're not actually retaining your existing ones, then that's where you'll be throwing money away. So if I could only look at one metric, it would be customer lifetime value and how that's actually changing as time progresses, and the levers that you can pull to change that essentially.
Okay, no, good answer. That's good. Very, very good to just give one. So go work out your customer lifetime value. It's hard, yeah. That then leads me on to loads of other things I want to ask about customer lifetime value, and then, but I don't think we've got time. So Neil, what are the key things for you? What do you advise people on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing for the board, you know, mostly the boards I sort of come across are the boards that are sort of steeped in bricks and mortar background and don't understand the digital landscape. And you've got to make it as very simple as possible and try and make it very simple, orientated towards what they understand already. I mean, they're all very intelligent people, but when it starts looking at, you know, what a lifetime value will be, they're probably in completely cloudland in understanding what that might be. A normal digital marketeer like Anna and myself absolutely understand that and totally understand the realization of that. But I think it has to be very simple for them. And I think, you know, you start looking at a website and you've seen during a pandemic where they've seen a massive increase in traffic. You know, it's been massive. Stores have been closed. Everyone's been shopping online. It's all been traffic based. You know, necessary average order value hasn't increased that much. If anything, conversion hasn't really increased that much at all. It's all been traffic based, and a lot of the retailers have been paying for that traffic through paid marketing. And I think the key thing for me is, you know, the board understand that. They understand footfall through the front door of the store, and that traffic is exactly the same. Traffic to a website is footfall through the front of the store. Conversion is how many people went to the cash desk and actually handed over the credit card or handed over the cash, and less cash these days, but actually paid for the product and walked out with it in a shopping bag. And, you know, they're things that they understand from their background and history. And I think, you know, the last sort of 12, 18 months with the pandemic, we've had this massive increase in traffic, massive increase in new customers. And I think if you're looking at most of these online retailers today, they've seen a massive new customer increase. 80% of their base in terms of traffic could be new customers. And the key important thing for me is how they retain them, that whole retention. Anna touched on it in terms of lifetime value. That may be one step a little bit more sophisticated, but how do you keep those customers that you've gained? You've paid for them through paid marketing, through it be paid in terms of Google, be it in terms of Facebook or social, but how do you keep them? How do you get that second, third order? And have you got the right marketing strategy in place to do that? Have you got the right email platform? Have you got the right communications that you're going on? Are you making the right offers at the right time, etc.? Very simple stuff that you would do in terms of one-to-one marketing so that you actually get your retention up. Because I bet you a lot of these businesses, particularly multi-channel, their retention rates will be really low, very low. And, this year, for me, the next 12 months is the year of retention. Retaining those customers you've acquired. How do you keep them? How do you keep them loyal? How do you get that second, third, fourth order? So you keep them coming back is a key.
I think we regularly get clients almost obsessed about new customer acquisition. And it's all about, what's my NCA numbers? What's my NCA numbers? And then actually it's a bit like a leaky bucket, because we're just putting the loads more in the top, and every time. And then the worst case scenarios is if it's not set up properly, you're then paying for your existing customers as well. Right, to come back, right? So, and the winner there is Google or Facebook, and they're not going to tell you, oh, sorry, don't give us any more money, but they'll happily take your money to sell to your existing customers. And I suppose with all of this, where do you think currently the sort of knowledge gaps lie within the sort of senior team? And I suppose, how can we, or how can the people listening in educate the board, right? Because I think what we've seen, to put this into a bit of context, is the numbers people are spending with Google and the numbers people are spending with Facebook are now massive. But I think sometimes people are scared to ask the question, well, is that actually a good idea to give Google 100 grand a month? Because it's a bit like, well, of course it is, it's sort of working. So where are those knowledge gaps to give people confidence to challenge the spend, or maybe challenge their agency or challenge their team, or those sorts of things? So
I often find, I'll speak to board members on a daily basis, and I've lost count of the amount of times that someone's come to me and said, oh, I've been speaking to so-and-so who's on the board of another brand, and they've told me my conversion rate should be 5% and my conversion rate's only 3%. What are we doing wrong? Or our retention rates 30% and it should be 40. Or what? So
idle pub chat informing strategy.
Yeah, exactly. So and I think what happens is quite often, because we know these like board level directors talk to other board level directors, and they will often kind of see how things are going, and it's kind of, there's so many places you can get benchmarks. But it's actually making sure that you use them wisely. So I think one thing you've got to be kind of careful of is just kind of taking a broad brush and actually think that business is dire because you're not there. Or on the flip side, you find out conversion rate should be 3% and yours is 5%. So actually you ignore everything because you kind of go, well, brilliant, we're masters, we don't need to do anything. But the thing for me is actually every business can do better. Yes, there'll be situations where metrics do go down. So for example, businesses that reacted to the pandemic by bringing in different products. So I've got a couple that actually clothing apparel clients that actually brought in face masks. That's going to have an impact on average order value. That's also going to have an impact on the type of customer you're acquiring, because all of a sudden you've got males buying from you. You've got people that actually don't know what else you sell because they found out on Google you sell face masks and come in and buy straight away, leave with no intention of ever buying from you again. So the thing for me is actually making sure that actually, instead of listening to the board and panicking that you're not hitting a figure that they want you to, actually looking at your own metrics and going, well, do you know what, this is what we're going to do to move the needle on those. And actually, if we can improve conversion rate by a small percentage, it means this to demand, means this to the bottom line. And actually looking at each kind of metric, each channel, everything kind of individually, and then going back to the board and kind of saying, well, this is what we can do to improve this, and this is what we did, and this is the benefit we saw. So we might not be at that 5% magic number or at that 20% open rate or whatever that might be, but we've got everything in place to improve it.
Okay, and Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I very similar to Anna. I think, I mean, I've got a client at the moment who's doing sort of, 15-20 million. He's got an ambition to do 100 million in 5 years, and they think the pandemic has sort of, set this massive sort of line of growth. And then I look, they
just extrapolated out the graph and they just keep going.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the board, the CEO, the CFO, they look at it and think, this is great, fantastic. This is a great order channel. We're going to get, next 3 years, 5 years, we're going to get this, bang. And then you look at some of the, issues that are involved. And I did a test order the other day, and I ordered 2 items. One item arrived next day. I had no tracking detail. I went onto the website to track the order, and the order was still saying not shipped, but I'd already received one item. The next day I received the next item, and an hour later, after receiving the second item, I got a dispatch email from this business saying they dispatched both items that were with me shortly. So I'd received one the day before, just received one an hour before the dispatch email, and it's completely not joined up. And this is a business that thinks it's going to grow its business by 3, 4, 5 times in the next 3 years, and it hasn't got its foundations, in terms of triggers and customer communications right yet. There's a lot of basic stuff in terms of e-commerce that I call them the hygiene level. There's these hygiene factors that you have to get right, and the bar is ever increasing. You've got the Bahoos, the ASOSes of the world that have set these, these bars, and they're quite high level bars now in terms of customer communication, delivery, expectations, etc. And you've got to have that level. You've got to have those hygiene factors before you can start playing with the big boys. And, it's sort of, a football analogy, really. You've got the Premier League players, and you've got these League One and League Two players that have got these great, sort of ambitions now post-pandemic that are opening their eyes, but they've got to invest. There's a big investment required by these businesses to get to that level they want to get to. And it's whether they have the sort of willpower, not so much the finance, but it's the willpower and the capability to do that. A lot of it is down to capability as well, and people skills and shortages, and having the right.
I think I'm trying to find the best Leeds United analogy to throw into here now. That's what we need. We need more e-commerce businesses to be more like Leeds United. But I think you're absolutely right, because often everybody just gets obsessed with chucking the money in to drive demand. But going back to your point, if we had a crap experience, I'm going to be a one-time purchaser, right? But then you're going to build your future model thinking, well, our customers are going to come back, and actually maybe pre-pandemic, our customer lifetime value was X, but we've got all these new customers, so automatically it's going to be this now going forward, and it's going to be the same. But that may or may not be the case based on, and we've got a couple of clients, and because they've had so much demand and there is a supply chain shortage, they're now starting to get negative reviews.
Yeah.
Actually, it's completely out of their hands, and they're doing the best they can, but then that's going to have a knock-on effect to future demand, right? So it's almost like it's creating this sort of, and I always have very, it drives me crazy, third-party reviews. People who are very close to me believe a random person on TripAdvisor above me.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll go stay somewhere, and I'll say to my wife, I'll say, I've stayed in this hotel, it's lovely. She'll look on TripAdvisor, goes, no, it's not. The TripAdvisor score's there. And I'm like, no, but I've been there. So we tend to put our faith and trust in third-party reviews. I suppose that's been a big risk. with all of it.
I think with that, John, it sows that seed of doubt, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so much she doesn't believe you.
Yeah.
She's read something else and she thinks, oh, you must have had a good experience, but all these other people had a shit experience. So and it's that seed of doubt. And then that seed of doubt means I don't convert and I won't proceed.
Sorry. What's funny is I've got a client at the moment who the owner of the client has received some negative reviews on Facebook, and as a result wants to pull all activity from Facebook because they're seeing it as they don't really understand digital. They have had retail stores. They feel that in the stores no one's complaining, but on Facebook people are. So therefore it must be really bad for the business. Rather than actually let's take a step back and review the customer journey, review the touch points and see where we're falling down. And actually, in some cases, the reviews are good for the business because, it's the same on the TripAdvisor example, John. When you're looking to book a holiday, you'll look at TripAdvisor and you'll laugh at some of the comments. And you'll kind of go, well, do you know what? If that's what they're complaining about, then I'm more than happy to go there. And you will laugh at some of the replies from the businesses on reviews because you'll kind of go, well, actually, they've got a point and they're being harsh. And I think the truth is people have had a lot more time on their hands to complain in the last year for certain customer demographics. And as a result, they use channels to moan about things, but it's kind of taking on board the reviews that you need to change your business because of, versus the ones where actually it's just a whinger who we need to find a way to filter.
Yeah, I think that's great, Anna, because I think the CEOs of the old brick and mortars businesses used to be out in stores every Friday, every Saturday. They'd be out in stores talking to customers, trying to understand what some of the issues may be. When I was CEO of an online business, we didn't have stores. We're an purely online and telephone sales order business. And I would spend at least probably 2 days a month on the phones, answering customer, orders, trying to understand what customers were understanding about the brand, what their complaints were. I'd read every review on FIFO that we use FIFO in those days. And I would read every review because everything was insightful. As a CEO, I was getting customer feedback and I was getting, the feedback that says, I've got an issue there. I need to fix it. I need to put some focus on it, whether it's an operational issue, whether it's a marketing issue, reputation issue, whatever it could be. But it was great, valuable feedback. And that was the feedback the CEOs of the stores would get on a Friday and Saturday and spend 2 days a week doing. I could do that in an hour a day, because I'm getting that ongoing feedback.
Yeah, and I suppose it's then ultimately looking at what was the process or the platform or the people? How can we then adjust to the business? Yeah. And then is it a sample size of one, or actually, there's 5 people who said the delivery didn't arrive on time? Well, we need to look at it. Yeah. I also think the challenge, going back to your sort of football analogy, though, Neil, is Amazon just have created this new sort of normal, right? It was perfectly okay a while ago to order something, it come next week, right? It's quite interesting looking at companies like Shine and Wish and this, that, and the other. You order things and you forget you ordered them, and then a month later they turn up. Well, that in itself is quite an interesting experience. But you can order things on Amazon now and they'll arrive within an hour, right? We ordered some Prosecco in the office the other week. We don't do this all the time, by the way. And it arrived cold inside an hour, right, from Amazon, right? That's just amazing, right? It is just absolutely amazing. But the problem with that is we all then think, well, I want one click. I don't want to have to put my data, and I want it to arrive the next day as a minimum. And I don't want to pay for delivery, and I want free returns, right? So
and I want that business to be sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. I want it to be made locally, and it's all recycled and this, that, and the other, and I want it cheap. So I think there's probably at some point there'll be a balancing out of customer expectations. We've already seen it. We've done some research with some of our clients around, well, actually, is Amazon the cheapest still? And we don't think it is, right? The prices on Amazon are going back up, but because it's easy, and they make the customer journey one click, and people aren't even going onto Google anymore. They just go straight to Amazon and buy stuff, right? And now, because Amazon's really clever with how they organize their stuff, you're buying the thing they make the most margin on.
Yeah.
Right, and that's just this.
I mean, this isn't the stat, John. I mean, you'll probably know more than me. And the stat is 100% searches in the world, only 50% are made on Google now. The other 50% are made on Amazon.
Yeah, the other stat I like is 87% of media spend goes on Facebook and Google, but 50% of transactions are happening on Amazon, right? Like literally half the internet in America is Amazon.
Yeah.
Right. So, but 90% of the money is still getting spent on Google and Facebook, right? That really doesn't make much sense, does it? So, but the big challenge, right? So we've got all these CEOs looking at all these reports and they're looking at the numbers. And as you highlighted, some of these numbers have skyrocketed, right? So we've started to see this exponential amount of traffic that's been converting. So we're getting sales. How are we going to deal with year-on-year reporting?
That's a massive question. I've just had 2 hours conversation about year-on-year reporting. And do you go back to the previous year, pre-pandemic? Do you start reporting based on that year? And I've just been speaking to, it must have been 40, 50 retailers on a webinar about this. And
you can mention the name. Hello?
I've lost you.
Oh, yeah, am I there? I thought I lost. Did you lose me?
Yeah, I lost you for a minute. Yeah.
All right. I said you can mention it. It's the IMRG webinar. We're all friends. We're fully paid up members of IMRG, so we can promote that.
Yeah, it was IMRG, and it was a massive topic of conversation. I mean, it's a big conundrum. I mean, you know, where is your base level for forecasting going forward? It's impossible, you know, and it all depends on the brand, the business, the vertical you're operating in. You know, how was that changed in terms of the pandemic? You know, what happened? Anna brought up the point earlier when one of her clients was selling face masks. You know, it's a different world out there, and you've got a different baseline. And I think my big key takeout, I think, from the IMRG webinar from the last couple of hours was agility. You know, that whatever forecast you put forward for the next 12 months is going to be wrong. And you need to have the agility to change very quickly in terms of whether it's trading, operational issues, and responding to what the customer, you know, is now doing. You know, who knows if there's going to be another lockdown in the winter? You know, they're talking about a big flu epidemic now in the winter. Are we going to get another lockdown for a period of time in the winter? Who knows? And you know, with those type of external factors going on, it's very difficult to put a forecast through, I think. Very difficult.
I think it's almost like, I wouldn't say reduce it to week by week, but certainly a couple of months at a time. Because if you put a 12-month plan together now, you could literally just rip it up and throw it out the window with the base. And also, we've got some clients are saying, well, if we just maintain the same as last year, we'll be happy, right? We don't want growth. And some of them are even saying, well, we'd be happy with 5% down on last year, actually, because last year was so good. And whereas then you've still other ones go, no, like you were saying with the client, well, last year was amazing, let's try and do that again. And go faster at the same rate of growth. So I suppose from your side, Anna, how have you been handling the sort of year-on-year reporting?
Well, I think that the problem is a lot of boards still want to see that long-term view. And therefore, it's hard to put a forecast in front of them telling them that it's not going to be accurate, or I'm only giving you 1 month or 2 months or whatever. So you've got to kind of try and tackle the longer term. What I've been doing with my clients and recommending for others as well is looking wherever you can, and this isn't possible in every business, but looking at lookalike audiences. Meaning not lookalike on Facebook, but I mean lookalike groups of customers. So for example, if you've got a elite group of customers or a VIP or top customers, whatever you call them, actually looking at their metrics and seeing how the trend of their metrics has compared. Because what I've seen across quite a few retailers is, yes, their demand figure has rocketed in the last year, but actually things like retention rate may not have done, or things like the lifetime value or what have you may not have fundamentally changed. So therefore you can plan to a degree. some of those groups. And what I've found with some where they've ignored year on year, when I've looked at certain metrics, certain metrics are actually not even where they were 2 years ago. But they've been hidden by a great demand figure. So it's actually looking and making sure that your foot's not off the gas on some stuff, because one of the things that's happened in the last year, yes, we've had people land on websites at a greater rate and more traffic. But a lot of retailers have got a lot more fast paced. So there's been stuff like new stuff come to market. There's been people that have been putting a lot more effort into things, and those brands that have kind of worked really hard and actually haven't stood still, actually have seen not just the short-term gain, but they will see that long-term benefit as well. So because they'll have built, as Neil was saying earlier, they'll have built kind of the pillars and sort of the hygiene and all that to kind of help with the future. So I don't ignore year on year. But I'm not kind of looking at it and crying at night because I'm 20% behind in some cases. But likewise, I've got other brands that, because they've built a bigger house file, they are kind of still retaining the increases.
Yeah, that goes back to Neil's thing about just making sure you've got all your hygiene and basics in place to actually communicate your regular offers, your regular newsletters, all the bits. People who bought that also bought this, and just getting all of that tied up. You bought this 2 months ago. A lot of people bought that 2 months ago. Now buy this. It goes with that. So one question we've just had in on the Q&A, which I think is a fascinating topic, and I as a sort of broad marketer from all sorts of different background, for me, I think there's a question sometimes we raise, and we're like data people mainly, but has the availability of data science and mathematics, I suppose, killed some of the traditional sorts of marketing, right? The question could be asked, because we're just relying, and I'll give you an example. So if you're scrolling through Facebook now, every 5th post is an ad, right? And they're highly targeted to me and this, that, and the other, or not, depending on if you're on iOS 14 or not. Again, that's probably a different webinar. Because it's a pay for play focus on, I put £1 in, I get £10 back out from my Google, have we lost the visibility or the art, or what's the sort of board's view on investing in proper content, proper copywriting, decent creative, decent imagery? Because I think if you actually looked at the maths of it, we've got clients who are spending millions on Google, and then you've got the amount of money they actually spend on maybe building up decent product pages or decent category pages, and actually investing in imagery and investing in things which will not only improve the SEO, but it'll also improve conversion rate and this and the other. So I suppose, what are you seeing, and is that going to be, I think, potentially, when you were talking about the year of retention as well, I think it needs to be also the year of sort of content and conversion, because there's going to get to a point of almost the normal distribution curve of like, well, we can't drive any more paid traffic, right? We can't spend any more money, right? We need to get traffic in a different way, or we need to improve the conversion rate, right? So that's actually arguably the biggest. If you could change your conversion rate, well, you won't need as much traffic. Right? So I don't know, what do you guys think about this sort of paid media versus actually old-fashioned content and copywriting?
So I'm actually seeing that. So content actually on the retailer's website is more important than ever. And especially with Google changing some of their algorithms recently, and they've got more coming up. However, the content of ads and things like, so for example, what that Facebook ad contains is actually becoming, well, I've actually, an example, I work with a clothing brand, and we've invested quite a lot recently in a new agency to help us build content for paid advertising, as specifically Facebook and Instagram. And although they've created some brilliant ad spreads which look really compelling, and I thought they'd have moved the needle, the dynamic, the DPA ones are still performing better. So actually, the likes of Google as well. So, but Google and Facebook, their automations have got better, and some of their kind of algorithms behind what they show and how the audiences they target have improved. So for me, it's what I've kind of recently learned after trying it again, thinking, well, kind of doubting my previous knowledge because I was determined to get something bigger and better, is actually focusing on content on the site, because it helps with SEO and helps with the building blocks and helps with conversion once people land on the site. But actually not worrying, as obviously I don't want crap adverts out there. But automation has got a place.
Yeah, okay. And Neil, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think Anna's right. I mean, I think what I've seen in terms of my clients is a massive increase in paid traffic during the pandemic. They've all been sort of paying for all this traffic, and then conversely, you've seen this poorer performance in terms of organic and direct. And a lot of that relates to the fact that a lot of these boards, don't understand the investment in content and don't understand the investment in, PLPs, PDPs, sort of rich content on those pages that Google can index and that you can use in other channels as well. We typically know. I mean, most clothing brands will tell you if they're the right type of clothing brands with the right type of customers, and it depends on the brand again. But if you start putting video or 360-degree on products at the right price, your conversion rate will be 2 to 3 times higher on those products, because you're just making them more interactive and more interesting, and people engage with it. And that's just important stats that happen, and you have to make that investment. If you're selling a pen, my pen I've got in my hand, you might not want to invest a video in that pen because it's only costing whatever it's cost, £3.99, where it.
And I think also people don't prioritize. In my previous world at my last business, we had a client and we were reviewing all their products, and they just literally started almost in an alphabetical order. Right, we need to improve the imagery, we need to improve the video, and this, that, and the other. And off they went. And we're like, well, hang on, let's focus on the stuff that's either got the biggest margin or got the biggest ticket, right? That's going to make the difference. Let's do it in a sort of commercial way. But something that was more fun, and I suppose this is a reasonably adult audience at 4:45 on a Wednesday, is we used to work with Durex, and we helped them do direct consumer with some of their sex toys. And when we put the 360 rotating views on that, conversion rate went to nearly more than doubled overnight. So that's always a fun one we used to share with clients in our decks, and used to get a few blushes from different people. So, but yeah, absolutely right. And I think that investment, but also it's not just a one-off investment, it's the investment in the process of pulling all of this together, right? And I think that's the bit that often people think, right, well, we'll do this as a one-off, we'll improve it. Well, no, it's just, let's change the way that we list our products, right? Let's get some training, let's get some improved cameras, let's get a better setup, right? So it's ongoing forever, rather than just a one-off. It needs to change forever. So
I think some of those hurdle rates are increasing, aren't they? I mean, because I think you've got this whole sustainability piece that's coming in as well, this ESG piece, if you like, in terms of, going forward. And how do some of those products conform, and does that sort of if you're a Boohoo or someone of that nature, your clients, your customers there are probably understanding how much they can get for 30 quid and aren't really interested in sustainability. But in other brands, sustainability might be quite an interesting thing to put on there. So
I think the challenge is when we've done some data work on this and survey work on this, people say they're interested in sustainability, right? And it when stopped and asked, but then they'll go and buy a t-shirt for £1 at Primark, right? Yeah, so they're clearly not. So I suppose there's the reality about my perceived impression of what I want the world to look at me like, but versus the reality of what my budget is. So one question and one thing we've seen, and I don't know if you'd agree or disagree, is the high demand and increased traffic from the pandemic masking potentially poor team performance, poor agency performance, and actually how many CEOs are actually benchmarking themselves against their peers to go, well, actually, yeah, we're actually performing worse than the market because the market's going like Billy O. We've been going like Billy O, but actually we've missed a bit of our pie, right?
So I work with a furniture brand, and last year they wanted to understand why they'd heard some competitors were 200% up and they were only 20% up. And I had to actually remind them that they didn't have the stock in the warehouse to actually support more than a 20% increase. And actually pretty much everything on their website had sold out. So it's actually it's not just the kind of the demand and the hunger, it's actually things like the stock levels and stuff like that as well. So, but no, you're right, in terms of, I think there's a lot of poor kind of marketing executions and marketing teams out there that haven't almost been found out. So because they're gonna, like, once things well, they are starting to normalize with some metrics, and even things like where you've got brands where they've got a physical retail store, like physical retail stores that haven't been open, then all of a sudden their metrics, they're all of a sudden having to answer to why metrics are starting to go completely the opposite way. Yeah, there's been too many brands that have stood still. But there's also been some that have moved much faster than they ever normally would do in a 12-month period. Yeah,
because when we work with the shoe brand, and the market tells you not many people have been buying shoes, right? Actually, in lockdown, right? Who's buying a £300 pair of office work shoes in lockdown? But their pacing actually I don't believe, I think it's down to their internal team has really got hold of this, and that they've accelerated ahead of the market, whereas some people actually pulled back and thought, well, nobody's buying shoes, we should stop advertising. But some people are, and they're selling a lot of shoes. So I suppose from your side, Neil, do you think that's the case? Sort of, is it down to the agency and the team's success, or is this just all down to demand, and is it hiding some poor practice?
It's definitely hiding poor practice in my view. I think, I mean, everyone's sort of ridden this wave of pandemic in terms of demand and traffic, and it's hidden and masked poor performance. And I think some respects, probably, I wouldn't call it agency abuse, but agencies are getting paid on media spend, and I think agencies have seen it as a golden opportunity because traffic is out there, massive amounts of traffic. So why not increase client spend, because I'm going to get paid more, and the client is going to get more benefit as well, because the demand is out there. So well,
my views on linking spend to fees. It's just completely wrong. But anyway,
absolutely completely wrong. And I think someone's put on the question mark, haven't they? It's on the question and answer chat board about attribution as well.
Are we going to tackle this in 10 minutes? I mean, I'm going to be impressed. Neil. I'm going to be really impressed. If you can nail attribution in 10 minutes, you're a better man than me.
I mean, I would, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we were talking about the board, and if you try bringing up something as complicated and complex as attribution to the board, I think you're on a hiding to nothing. I would very much keep it simplicity first, step first. Use the attribution that you're using in an e-com team to try and finesse that spend and finesse what you're doing in different channels, but then sort of gradually expose the board to it. But there's no way you can get the board involved in attribution at day one. It's just so complex. And so
if you were going back to that to sort of start the attribution conversation around performance of my marketing spend, what would you recommend? Is it a sort of return on ad spend? Is it a cost of sale? Is it a cost per acquisition? What numbers do you tend to recommend people to focus on from that sort of point of view?
With me, it depends on the brand and what the spend of the brand, the average order value of the brand, what the brand's looking to achieve. Is the brand a brand in a dying marketplace where it needs to make a profit per order, so the cost per order has got to be positive? Is it a growing marketplace where the brand has got a lot of money in, it's trying to invest in a new customer database and new customers, so it's very, very clear that it wants to get a good CPA because he wants more customers through into the bucket so that he can start marketing to them ongoing and have a good retention rate going. And so it really depends on the brand and the objectives. I don't think there's any one that you can say. It's horses for courses, depending on where that brand and that retailer is in terms of the sort of life stage, I suppose, of that retailer and what its objectives are. But, I would never look at one measure in isolation. I think a lot of businesses just look at ROAS and they think, I'll work on a 5, 6, 7 ROAS, and they ignore all the other issues that they've got around the product margin, the cost of delivery, the fulfillment, etc. Are they really making a profit out of that order? I don't know.
And the other thing I've seen, and we've seen this a lot, is they go, oh no, we've got our cost of sale numbers, we've got it nailed down, we know exactly what it is. And then that's the same number and it stays the same number, but they're bringing in stuff from all over the world in multiple currencies with different rates of shipping, and it's still the same cost of sale number. And we're like, well, surely there's like the currency fluctuations, there's things that are changing all the time. We need to review this. Maybe not daily, maybe not weekly, but certainly every month we need to go, right, what's the new cost of sale target, right? Because the world is changing all the time. So Anna, what's your sort of view on those sort of cost versus performance metrics?
So I think that the board need to know what they want to achieve. I think I've actually worked with some boards in the past that they actually don't know what they want next year to be, which makes it very, very hard. So I think they need to understand or know what they want to achieve. So whether it's a 5% increase in sales or flat or whatever that may be. And then kind of looking at that, working backwards and going, well, actually, how are we going to achieve that? And what are the measures of success going to be around that? And then constantly kind of measuring against those measures of success. So because if you don't know what good looks like, how the hell are you meant to produce good? But I think what I do with quite a lot of my the retailers that I work with is I'll look at what that mix needs to be of new customers and existing customers, and then I'll look at the total spend. And look to see if the figure makes sense when you look at all the costs associated, because the whole thing with attribution is if you're looking at everything in isolation, you're then going to be double counting, and you've not kind of accounted for that. So I think the key thing is overall your cost per acquisition needs to be a number that makes sense across everything that you're doing, and then you can have challenges within it. I find that with a lot of boards, the paid channels are an easier argument to have than things like investing in content or things like investing in areas where it's quite hard to actually put a number against. Gone are the days where everything was as easy as a catalogue. You mail them and that name and address purchases. So if only. So yeah, I think it's just making sure you're putting every cost into it. And as you said, John, it's not the same per market. You've got to think about the costs, rules, repeat purchase, but returns rates, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, well, that's I think starts wrapping it up quite nicely. So, so first of all, thank you for giving up your time and joining to share the audience. If there was sort of one key takeaway, and you're going to go in to see, I don't know, a board of a multi-channel retailer, and they've had an epic lockdown. Right, and they're now trying to work out what to do next. What's the one key bit of advice? What do they need to do around their numbers or metrics? What's the thing they need to go do tomorrow?
Shall I pick up first? Yeah. I mean, for me, it's keep it simple. The key thing is keep it simple in terms of what they're going to measure as a KPI. And I think because they've ridden the wave, for me, it's all around customer retention. They've got to retain as many of those customers that they've paid for, because they have paid for them, unfortunately. Most of it has been performance marketing through Google, through Bing, mainly through Google, not Bing, but they've paid for them, and they've paid, top dollar for them over the last 12 months. And they need to make sure that they use that database going forward for the next 12 months and work it and try and get that second, third, fourth order and turn them into loyalists for that brand and get that retention rate up to a decent level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, Neil. I think the other thing, just to add on that, is don't try flog a dead horse, in the sense that, so if you did change your product mix based on COVID, so for example, with the face mask example I gave earlier, no matter what you do to some of those customers, they're potentially not going to come back, or it's because you're trying to flog them something that actually they've never been interested in the first place. So actually make sure that you are going after the right people with the right messaging that's relevant to them. Yeah, and if you can improve that retention rate or even maintain, you've got a winning formula.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you for your time. The next session, we're going to take the summer off, I think. Hopefully, even try and get away on holiday if that's not too controversial. But the next session we're actually going to do is we're going to get a data and IP expert on, lawyer expert, to talk about the impacts of cookieless tracking. So that session is like, what does it mean? How are we going to deal with it? What's actually going to happen? So I'll send everybody who's been on this a video of what we've done today, and also the date and time for the next session. So thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you very much to Anna and Neil for sharing their time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, John.
Excellent. Cheers now.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.